Hey guys, welcome back to the Piano Lessons for Beginners series. In this sixth part, I'm going to talk to you about voice leading and chord inversions. So we're going to mix some theory and some practical understanding. Let me start by playing a chord progression that is supposed to accompany a pretty simple melody. And the melody is So, and the chord progression itself will sound like this. Now, most of the chords I've played here, you should already know. For example, this was a G major, this is a C major, an F major, a C major. I've taught you all of these in the first lesson, so you can go back and watch it if you need a refresher. The first chord, however, you haven't seen yet. And I'll already tell you that this is an A minor. Now, you've already learned what an A minor should look like, again in the first lesson, but now I'm playing it differently, and both of these forms are equally valid. And this brings us into the concept of voicings and chord inversions. But before I go into that, I'll just say that the entire point of what I've done here is I've played chords in a way that created a pleasing voice leading. So voice leading refers to the way in which the chords themselves move. And instead of, let's say, you can have something that sounds like this. Now, obviously this sounds a bit silly because the C jumps around. Why would you jump around? And you sort of intuitively understand that as the closer the chords are to each other, the more pleasing the end result is. And in this particular case, the upper note of the chords I've used match the melody. So and that's really a simple example of what we call voice leading. Again, maybe a more complex example, which we won't get into in this case, but would be something like. So I've used chords that sort of are close to each other, and their upper note in this case moved in a sensible way. It sort of had the upper motions. And that's another example, more advanced one, of voice leading. Now, to have good voice leading, you have to get acquainted with the concept of chord voicings and inversions, which we'll do next. Now, when I first taught you what an A minor looks like, I said, play an A, a C, and an E. Now, any way in which you play these three notes will give you an A minor chord. So for example, I can take this E, or let's do it, I can take this A and move it up an octave, and I would still be playing a C, E, and A. So this would still be an A minor chord. Now you can take this C up an octave again, and again I'm still playing A, C, and E, just in a different order. So this is still an A minor. And I can take this E up an octave again, and first of all, I'm back in the original form I started from, right? I started from this, now I'm here, just an octave higher, and I'm playing an A, C, and E, so this is still an A minor. So all of these are A minor chords. In fact, I could even do something like this, where the notes are spread out, and I'm playing an A, C, sorry, an A, E, and C, so this is still an A minor. I'm even allowed to double these notes. For example, I can play this. So all you're seeing here are, I'm either playing an A, well, here and here and here, or an E, here and here, or a C, here and here. So this is still an A minor. So as long as I play these three notes in whatever order, whatever doubling, I'm playing an A minor. So all of these are different voicings of A minor, basically different orderings of the notes that make up A minor, A, C, and E. This particular form is called the root form of A minor. First of all, it has A as the lowest note, and then then C and E are the sort of the closest two notes above it. It's not exactly the most theoretically proper definition of the root form, but it will work for now. When I move the lowest note up an octave, I get the first inversion of A minor. Then I move the lowest note again up an octave, I get the second inversion of A minor, and I move it up an octave, I get the, well, this is not the third inversion, but it's back to the root form. There's no third inversion. There's only root form, first inversion, second inversion, root form, first inversion, second inversion, root form, and so on. Now, this chord I played at the beginning is actually the second inversion of A minor. So I've basically used an inversion of A minor to help me voice lead. I used the second inversion of A minor into the G major, into C major. The entire idea here being that the notes of, well, I basically looked for the version of A minor that had, or the inversion of A minor that had C as its uppermost note. This is the second inversion, and then I used the regular chords I already taught you because they already had D and E as their uppermost notes. Now, you might be asking yourself, first of all, are there inversions and voicings for other chords as well? And the answer is yes. Let's take another example. This is a C major chord. It's made out of three notes, C, E, and G. Actually, it's not the root form of C. If I take this G up here, then I get the root form of C major. It's made of three notes, C, E, and G. The lowest note is C, and the E and the G are sort of the closest I can get to the C down here. I can make the first inversion of it, take this C up an octave, and the second inversion, take this E up an octave. So this is the second inversion, and again, take the lowest note, move it up an octave, and get back to the root form. Now, this second inversion of C major is actually the C major I taught you in the first lesson. Why didn't I teach you the root form? Isn't the root more important? Well, no, not really. What's really important is voice leading. And the chords I taught you in the first lesson, C major, F major, G major, and A minor, were all I specifically chose inversions or forms of these voicings that are close together. Because again, what creates a pleasing sound is sort of having your chords close together. I could have taught you the root forms of all four chords. In that case, I would have taught you the root form of A minor, the root form of C major, the root form of F major, and the root form of G major. But then imagine, for example, how a progression like C major to F major to G major to C major would sound like. get this funny jump, which makes the chords sound a bit disconnected. It sounds a lot better if you do something like this. And this is done using the forms I taught you in the first lesson. Now, every chord, every triad, every chord that we've seen so far is made out of 3 notes, and you can create a root form, a first inversion, and a second inversion for that chord. You can do it for majors, you can do it for minor chords. And there are, as you'll probably start realizing, a lot of ways to voice each chord, and now comes a big challenge of how do you find the best inversion for what you're playing? And there's no easy answer to this. You really have to sit down with every song you learn and sort of figure out what the chords are. Well, you'll hopefully have that in some sheet music that you've acquired. And then you have to sit down and try out different inversions of the different chords and see if you can find a pleasing progression. You should also think about what the upper note should be, if that makes some sort of difference. And there's also more than one way to voice a particular progression in a pleasing manner. Let me give you an example. Let's say again that you have a song that is C major to F major, and then C major, F major, and C major and F major. So, I mean, let's say something like Imagine comes to mind. So you could play it using the chord forms I've shown you in the first lesson. Now instead, you could also use the root form of C major and the second inversion of F major. Just to convince yourself this is the root form of C major, again, start from this, move this G up an octave. This was a C major chord, right? Move this G up an octave, and you have the form of C major that is made of C at the bottom and then E and G immediately after it. Again, to convince yourself this is the second inversion of F major, what you can do is, well, let's start from the F major you know that I've taught you in the first lesson, which looks like this. And I'm going to move this F down an octave. So I get F, A, and C. F is the lowest note, and A and C immediately come after it. So they're as close as possible as can be. So this is the root form of F. Move this F up an octave, get the first inversion. Move this A up an octave, get the second inversion. My point is that you can also play this song, which is made of an alternating C major to F major, using these 2 forms. So you can have this, or maybe maybe, or maybe, in the third example, I used this first inversion of C major and the root form of F major. So you see there are all of these different options, and there are no easy answers, I'm afraid to say. You just have to sit down with whatever song you're learning and figure out which inversions each chord has, and then play around until you find a pleasing progression. As you do this more and more, you'll become more acquainted with the options that you have, and this will become easier. But there's no substitute for actually learning these things, doing them slowly initially, thinking about them, and slowly getting better. That's it for now. I hope you've learned something interesting, and I'll see you next time.